Imagine standing in the parking lot of a quiet suburban golf club on a crisp Saturday morning. Two colleagues, both in their early 40s, both working in senior management at the same regional firm, both earning roughly $175,000 a year, pull into adjacent parking spaces. The first manager, David, steps out of a leased German luxury crossover with a high-gloss black finish and an 84-month loan agreement sitting in his glove box. His phone is the latest flagship model released 3 weeks ago. His athletic wear features bold designer branding, and he casually mentions that he and his wife are about to break ground on a 6-figure kitchen renovation because their 4-year-old countertops feel outdated. To anyone watching from the clubhouse patio, David looks like the picture of modern American success. He looks like someone who has made it. 3 spaces over, Sarah steps out of an 8-year-old Honda Outback with a faint scuff on the rear bumper that she has never bothered to repair. Her clothes are plain, well-made basics with 0 visible logos. Her phone is a 4-year-old device with a slightly worn protective case. When the conversation turns to home improvements, she mentions that she still lives in the same 3-bedroom ranch she bought a decade ago, despite having received 4 major promotions since signing the mortgage. If you asked a stranger in that parking lot to guess which of these 2 colleagues carries a 7-figure net worth, almost everyone would point at David. And almost everyone would be dead wrong. David carries a checking account balance that dips under $1,200 2 days before payday, $34,000 in revolving credit card debt at 22% interest, and an emergency fund that could barely cover 2 weeks of his mortgage payments. Sarah, sitting quietly behind the wheel of her fading Outback, has maxed out her tax-advantaged accounts for 12 consecutive years, holds over $1.3 million compounding in broad market index funds, and could walk away from her corporate job tomorrow without experiencing a single flicker of financial panic. That gap, the vast invisible ocean between looking prosperous and actually being wealthy, is the central paradox of the modern economy. When researchers study everyday millionaires, not the loud influencers flashing rented sports cars on social media, but the real ones who built 7-figure portfolios on ordinary professional salaries, they discover a striking behavioral pattern. Wealthy people do not build their independence by figuring out how to consume more. They build it by developing a sophisticated, almost instinctual refusal to upgrade the specific categories of life that consumer culture tells you to upgrade automatically. In behavioral finance, this is known as breaking the engine of hedonic adaptation, the psychological phenomenon where every upgrade in comfort, size, or prestige becomes your new baseline within 90 days, requiring ever larger infusions of capital just to maintain the exact same level of daily satisfaction. Today, we're walking through 14 things wealthy people flatly refuse to upgrade, the hidden mathematical mechanisms that make these refusals so extraordinarily lucrative over time, and the exact mindset shift required to turn surplus income into permanent freedom. Let's get into it.
Number 1. Daily transportation and vehicle model cycles. The auto lot is ground zero for middle-class wealth destruction. According to automotive industry data from Experian, the average new vehicle transaction price in America has climbed near $50,000, with the average monthly payment sitting at a record $767. To keep those monthly figures looking manageable against rising sticker prices, the industry has normalized 84-month loan terms, 7 full years of payments on an asset engineered to lose 30% of its value in the first 2 years. What the consumer economy frames as a rational lifestyle upgrade, the quietly wealthy recognize as a mathematical catastrophe. When you finance a $50,000 new vehicle, you are taking capital that could be earning 8% compound returns and tying it to an asset that depreciates by 20% the instant its tires touch public asphalt. A person who trades in their vehicle every 3 years to maintain a new model year carries a permanent, perpetual auto payment of $800 a month. When Thomas Stanley conducted his landmark research for The Millionaire Next Door, surveying over 10,000 actual millionaires across the country, he discovered that the median price paid by millionaires for their most recent car was just $31,367. Data consistently shows that the top 3 brands driven by everyday millionaires are Toyota, Honda, and Ford, not German luxury badges. Furthermore, over 60% of high-net-worth households drive vehicles that are several model years old, often keeping them for 10 to 15 years until the mechanical repair costs finally exceed the vehicle's market value. The math behind this single refusal is staggering. If you trade an $800 monthly luxury car payment for a paid-off 6-year-old Japanese sedan and automate that $800 directly into a broad market index fund averaging 8% annual returns, that single decision accumulates over $740,000 of net worth over a 30-year career. Wealthy people do not drive older cars because they cannot afford new ones. They drive older cars because they run the opportunity cost math and realize that the new car smell is the single most expensive fragrance on the planet. Number 2. Housing square footage and neighborhood prestige upgrades. The second major wealth killer is the assumption that every promotion, salary increase, or bonus demands a larger home in a higher prestige zip code. When a middle-class household experiences an income jump from $80,000 to $130,000, the immediate cultural reflex is to sell the baseline home and purchase a larger house that absorbs the entire raise in principal, property taxes, insurance premiums, and utility costs. The mortgage lender gladly approves the maximum ceiling, calculating what the household can technically survive paying without defaulting immediately. The quietly rich operate from the opposite framework, the fixed lifestyle principle. According to Federal Reserve survey data, primary residential real estate accounts for roughly 32% of a typical millionaire's total net worth. For struggling high earners, that figure often exceeds 60 or 70%. When your house consumes 40% of your take-home pay, you are house-rich and cash-poor, trapped in a magnificent structure that starves your investment engine of liquid capital every single month. Moreover, square footage carries what economists call the lifestyle multiplier effect. A larger house does not merely cost more in mortgage principal, it requires 60% more energy to heat and cool, double the property taxes, higher insurance premiums, and thousands of dollars in extra furniture just to fill empty rooms that nobody walks into. A single roof replacement on a 4,000 square foot home can easily cost $25,000, wiping out an entire year of emergency savings in a single afternoon. By anchoring their housing footprint to a modest, highly affordable home and refusing to trade up every time their income grows, wealthy households keep their fixed survival overhead low. The widening gap between their climbing income and their flat housing expense is redirected straight into compounding assets, turning what would have been high mortgage overhead into generational independence.
Number 3. Personal electronics and annual smartphone refresh cycles. Every autumn, major technology conglomerates host polished media events engineered to execute a single task: convince you that the 3-year-old device sitting in your pocket is suddenly inadequate. They highlight marginal camera improvements, slightly faster processing benchmarks that no human can perceive during daily tasks, and subtle design shifts designed to signal to observers that you possess the latest iteration. The consumer on autopilot signs a fresh financing plan, adding $35 to $60 a month to their cellular bill in perpetuity as they cycle from device to device every 12 to 18 months. Wealthy individuals view technology strictly as a utility, never as a status badge. A functioning smartphone that makes calls, sends encrypted messages, manages calendar appointments, and executes banking transactions does not cease to be valuable simply because a newer color option was released. When you evaluate the annual tech upgrade cycle through the lens of long-term opportunity cost, the waste becomes glaring. Upgrading a phone, tablet, and smartwatch every year versus keeping functional hardware for 4 to 5 years costs a household between $5,000 and $9,000 per decade in hardware depreciation and device insurance alone. More critically, annual upgrading reinforces a dangerous psychological infrastructure. It trains your brain to associate current with adequate and previous with unacceptable. Once that psychological default takes root, it bleeds out of your phone and into your car, your furniture, your wardrobe, and your appliances. Wealthy people break that psychological cycle early. They use hardware until it stops receiving critical security updates or suffers irreparable battery degradation, then replace it systematically without fanfare. Number 4. Wardrobe fast fashion and loud designer logos. There is an inverse relationship between the visibility of a brand logo and the net worth of the person wearing it. Sociologist Thorstein Veblen coined the term conspicuous consumption over a century ago to describe the practice of purchasing visual signals for the primary purpose of communicating social status to observers. In modern retail, loud luxury, clothing heavily stamped with oversized designer logos, saturated patterns, and recognizable brand hardware, is engineered specifically for middle and upper-middle-class consumers seeking to signal financial arrival. The markup on designer apparel routinely runs 400 to 600% above the manufacturing cost of equivalent unbranded garments. The truly wealthy have largely transitioned to stealth wealth or quiet utility. They wear plain, exceptionally well-made basics constructed from durable natural fabrics with zero visible external branding. When you look at figures who built extraordinary wealth, from Warren Buffett to everyday millionaires in your local community, their wardrobes are characterized by extreme consistency and longevity. They evaluate clothing on 3 cold criteria: fit, durability, and cost per wear. Consider the arithmetic of cost per wear. A $300 pair of high-quality leather boots or a timeless wool coat worn 200 times a year across 5 years costs roughly 30 cents per wear. A $60 trendy fast fashion jacket, worn 4 times before losing its shape or falling out of style, costs $15 per wear. The cheap, trend-focused item is 50 times more expensive in practice. Wealthy individuals buy quality once, repair items when needed, ignore seasonal trend cycles, and keep their capital in their brokerage accounts rather than hanging in their closets. Number 5. Commodity household goods and generic consumer staples. Walk down the pantry or health and beauty aisle of any supermarket and you will see 2 identical bottles sitting side by side. On the left is a national brand name laundry detergent or over-the-counter pain reliever costing $18. On the right is the store brand generic equivalent costing $10. In almost every case, the chemical formulation inside those 2 containers is identical. Under strict federal regulations, generic over-the-counter medications are required to contain the exact same active ingredients in the exact same dosage and concentration as their brand name counterparts. Generic ibuprofen and brand name Advil are chemically indistinguishable in medical efficacy. In fact, major consumer packaged goods companies routinely manufacture store-brand products inside the exact same industrial plants that produce their flagship brands, simply slapping a private label on the container at the end of the run. When a consumer reaches for the brand name item, they are not paying for superior product performance. They are paying a self-imposed brand tax to reimburse the manufacturer for the tens of millions of dollars spent on Super Bowl commercials and marketing campaigns. A household that systematically audits its shopping list and switches to generic or store brand options across commodity categories, cleaning supplies, staple foods, paper goods, basic medications, and pantry staples, saves between $1,500 and $3,000 annually. When a wealthy person like Harold, the $42 million manufacturing founder, buys store-brand ibuprofen instead of the brand name version, he is not being cheap. He is applying the exact same rigorous cost-benefit analysis to a $10 purchase that he applied to multi-million-dollar equipment acquisitions in his business. He refuses to pay for marketing illusion. Number 6. High-fee financial products and advisory drag. This is the most catastrophic leak on the list because it is entirely mathematical and completely invisible. There is no physical bill, no credit card charge, and no cashier asking for your approval. The money is quietly siphoned directly out of your compounding returns before you ever lay eyes on it. When an investor places their liquid capital into actively managed mutual funds carrying expense ratios of 1% or higher, or hires a traditional wealth manager who charges a standard 1% annual assets under management fee, it sounds like a negligible cost. It's just 1%, people tell themselves. What the financial sales industry relies on you never calculating is what a tiny 1% fee does when compounded across 30 years of portfolio growth.
Imagine two professionals who both invest $10,000 a year starting at age 30. Investor A selects low-cost broad market index funds with an average expense ratio of 0.04%. Investor B uses an actively managed fund network and pays a 1% advisory fee, creating a total fee drag of roughly 1.2% annually. Assuming a baseline market return of 8%, by age 65, Investor A accumulates approximately $1.4 million. Investor B, carrying that small 1% fee, finishes with roughly $950,000. That 1% fee did not cost Investor B 1% of their wealth. It wiped out over $450,000, nearly 35% of their lifetime compounding potential. Worse still, decades of SPIVA, S&P indices versus active data, consistently prove that over a 15-year horizon, more than 90% of actively managed stock funds fail to beat a simple unmanaged index fund, like the S&P 500, after accounting for fees. Wealthy individuals refuse to pay premium prices for strategies that statistically underperform the market. They buy low-cost broad market index funds, lock in expense ratios below 0.05%, and keep the full engine of compound growth working for themselves. Number 7. Whole life insurance and permanent policy structures. Few financial products are marketed with as much emotional manipulation as permanent life insurance, whole life, or universal life policies sold as wealth-building strategies. Insurance salespeople pitch these products as sophisticated, multi-purpose financial Swiss Army knives, offering a death benefit to protect your family, tax-advantaged cash value growth, and an asset you can borrow against in retirement. To a clear-eyed investor, mixing insurance with investing produces a vehicle that handles both tasks poorly while charging exorbitant fee structures. The premiums on a whole life policy are routinely 5 to 10 times higher than the price of an equivalent term life insurance policy. During the first several years of a permanent policy, a massive percentage of your monthly premiums goes straight toward paying the agent's heavy upfront commission and institutional overhead.
The actual cash value accumulation inside the policy is notoriously sluggish, yielding long-term returns that historically lag far behind a basic index fund portfolio. The approach utilized by everyday millionaires is brutally clean. Keep insurance and investing completely separated. Buy cheap, straightforward term life insurance for the specific decades when your family actually depends on your primary income to cover living expenses or mortgages. Take the massive difference in premium costs that you would have surrendered to a whole life policy and invest it directly into tax-advantaged accounts like a Roth IRA or 401k. You secure dramatically higher death benefit protection during your working years and accumulate a vastly superior net worth by the time the term policy expires. Number 8. Stacked, unmonitored digital streaming and content subscriptions. A decade ago, cord cutting was celebrated as a financial victory. You could cancel a bloated $150 monthly cable bill and subscribe to a single streaming service for $8 a month. In 2026, the digital entertainment ecosystem has quietly rebuilt the exact same cable bundle, chopped into fragmented pieces. Media conglomerates have intentionally broken up their libraries across dozens of independent platforms, each charging between $10 and $22 a month for ad-free tiers. The average American household now carries between 4 and 6 active streaming subscriptions, quietly spending over $80 a month on video content alone. When you add music streaming, cloud storage tiers, digital news passes, gaming subscriptions, and app memberships, the average family bleeds over $2,000 a year in automated recurring charges. The primary danger of subscription models is that they are engineered to sit just beneath the threshold of conscious pain. A $12 monthly charge does not trigger the threat detection centers in your brain, so you ignore it. Meanwhile, the platform collects your money month after month for value you haven't touched in half a year. Wealthy individuals manage subscriptions with cold operational discipline. They practice sequential rotation. Maintain exactly one streaming platform at a time. Watch the specific content you care about on that platform, cancel the subscription before the auto-renewals date, and rotate to the next service. You maintain access to every piece of media produced while cutting your annual entertainment bill by more than 70%. Number 9. Aspirational fitness subscriptions and novelty exercise gear. Walk into millions of garages or spare rooms across the country, and you will find physical monuments to aspirational spending. $2,000 smart exercise bikes, specialized workout gadgets, and home gym setups that haven't been touched since February. Aspirational spending occurs when we purchase items not for the life we actually live, but for the idealized version of ourselves we imagine becoming. We tell ourselves that buying the high-end fitness equipment will automatically create the discipline to use it. The commercial fitness industry is structured around this psychological self-deception. Commercial gyms routinely sell 3 to 4 times more memberships than their facilities could physically accommodate, relying on the fact that roughly 67% of members will rarely or never show up after the initial New Year motivation wears off. The average unused gym membership drains between $50 and $100 a month out of checking accounts, costing $600 to $1,200 a year for a building the member never enters. Wealthy people enforce the proof of work rule. Force yourself to demonstrate consistency with free or basic tools before committing capital to specialized equipment. If you want to build a fitness habit, prove you can run 50 miles in your existing sneakers or execute bodyweight workouts on your living room floor consistently for 3 months. If the habit proves real, basic equipment earns its keep. If the desire was simply a passing mood, you just saved thousands of dollars that remain in your investment accounts. Number 10. Single-use kitchen appliances and specialty culinary gadgets. Retailers love the culinary section because it is filled with low-utility, single-use items designed to solve minor inconveniences that could easily be handled by basic kitchen tools. From specialized avocado slicers and electric egg cookers to high-end single-serve coffee pod machines, kitchen counters across America are cluttered with appliances that take up valuable square footage while delivering terrible cost-per-use metrics. Consider the economics of single-serve coffee pod machines versus traditional brewing methods. A single specialty coffee pod costs between 70 cents and $1.10. High-quality whole bean coffee brewed using a basic drip coffee maker, French press, or pour-over setup costs between 15 and 30 cents per cup. For a 2-coffee-a-day household, that minor daily difference in convenience tax accumulates to over $600 a year in pure pod markup for a lower quality cup of coffee that generates massive amounts of plastic waste. Wealthy individuals value versatile, durable tools over single-use gadgets. A single high-quality chef's knife, a solid cutting board, and a durable cast-iron skillet can execute 90% of culinary tasks better than a cabinet of plastic electric gadgets. They look at physical space as financial real estate. Crowding their home with single-use appliances creates visual and mental clutter while draining capital that should be compounding in liquid assets. Number 11. Status-driven first-class travel upgrades. There is a major structural difference between traveling for genuine rest, exploration, and cultural connection versus traveling to perform luxury for social observers. The commercial travel ecosystem is heavily optimized around upselling consumers on status tiers, premium economy upgrades, airport lounge passes, high-end hotel suites, and first-class domestic tickets that cost 3 to 4 times the price of a standard main cabin seat. For a domestic flight lasting 3 hours, paying an extra $600 to sit 4 inches further forward and receive a complimentary cocktail is an exorbitant exchange of capital for fleeting comfort.
When high-net-worth individuals pay for premium travel accommodations, they evaluate the purchase on a strict economic metric. Does this purchase protect my physical health or directly increase my productivity? On an 11-hour international flight where an executive must step off the plane and immediately run a critical business negotiation, a lie-flat business class seat is an investment in professional performance. On a 2-hour flight to visit family, paying double the ticket price for a slightly wider seat is pure status consumption. Furthermore, wealthy travelers frequently bypass expensive hotel chains by leveraging house swaps, long-term rentals, or simply choosing clean, highly rated, unpretentious accommodations where the primary goal is sleep, spending their actual vacation budget on memorable experiences rather than gilded hotel lobbies. Number 12. Third-party convenience and food delivery platforms. The explosion of third-party food delivery apps over the past several years represents one of the most aggressive convenience taxes ever introduced into daily cash flow. When you order a meal through a third-party delivery platform, you are subjected to a multi-layered pricing architecture designed to mask the true cost of the transaction. First, delivery platforms charge restaurants commissions of 15 to 30%, forcing restaurants to artificially inflate their in-app menu prices by 15 to 25% above their counter prices. Second, the platform attaches a mandatory service fee. Third, a delivery fee is added. Fourth, local regulatory surcharges are applied. And finally, you're expected to tip the driver. A meal that costs $18 at the restaurant counter quietly balloons to $40 or $48 by the time the bag lands on your porch. You are paying a more than 100% markup for lukewarm food delivered in a cardboard box. According to consumer spending surveys, the average regular user of food delivery platforms bleeds over $1,500 a year in pure platform markups and service fees.
If you take that $1,500 in wasted convenience tax and invest it annually into an index fund averaging 8% returns, that single app-tapping habit destroys over $80,000 of net worth across a 20-year period. When a wealthy person wants takeout, they execute a simple, low-tech system. They call the restaurant directly, drive 10 minutes to pick up the food themselves, support the local business fully, and keep the $20 convenience markup in their own checking account. Number 13. Aesthetic trend-chasing home renovations and decor. The home improvement industry operates on a relentless cycle of aesthetic obsolescence. HGTV programming, social media home tours, and interior design trends exist to convince homeowners that a perfectly functional, beautifully maintained kitchen or bathroom is unlivable simply because the cabinet color or tile pattern belongs to the previous decade. Homeowners regularly take out home equity lines of credit or spend $50,000 to $80,000 renovating kitchens and bathrooms that function flawlessly, operating under the comforting illusion that they are investing in their home. The cold data on home renovation return on investment tells a very different story. According to Remodeling Magazine's annual cost versus value report, major luxury home renovations rarely recover their cost on sale. The moment you spend $80,000 on a luxury kitchen overhaul, you have permanently lost $30,000 to $40,000 of capital. Wealthy homeowners distinguish between structural maintenance and aesthetic trend chasing. Replacing a failing roof, updating aging electrical systems, or repairing a foundation protects the asset's structural integrity. Destroying perfectly functional granite countertops to install this year's trending quartz is pure consumption. They embrace the Japanese aesthetic philosophy of wabi-sabi, finding beauty and satisfaction in things that are worn, aged, and imperfect, but still serve their purpose flawlessly. They let their homes age gracefully, avoid taking on high-interest equity debt for cosmetic updates, and allow their capital to compound in financial markets rather than burying it in drywall. Number 14. High-spending social circles and status validation networks. This is the master refusal, the foundational boundary that dictates whether every other item on this list succeeds or fails. Your financial defaults are heavily influenced by the 5 people you spend the most time with. If your primary social circle normalizes financing $60,000 vehicles, dining at expensive restaurants 3 nights a week, taking debt-funded luxury vacations, and constantly upgrading their lifestyles, your brain will naturally recalibrate its definition of normal to match them. Saying no to discretionary spending inside a high-spending social group feels like an admission of struggle or social distance, so people reach for credit cards to purchase approval they cannot afford. In Thomas Corley's 5-year Rich Habits study, he discovered that 93% of self-made millionaires intentionally cultivated social relationships with disciplined, long-term focused individuals. They actively sought out peers who normalized living below their means, building assets, and prioritizing long-term freedom over short-term display. The quietly rich develop the superpower of social immunity. They are completely comfortable declining expensive group outings, suggesting low-cost alternatives, or saying, "I'm going to sit this one out," without offering a defensive, elaborate justification. They understand that true security carries a quiet, unshakable confidence that requires zero external validation from strangers at a traffic light or peers at a dinner table. They refuse to let other people's spending habits dictate their net worth. If you recognized your own spending habits in several of these points today, do not feel discouraged. The modern economy was engineered with multi-billion-dollar marketing budgets specifically designed to keep you sleepwalking through these defaults. Building real wealth is not about starving yourself, cutting out every joy, or living in extreme deprivation. It is about waking up to the machinery and systematically plugging the leaks through a simple 90-day plan. During the first 30 days, execute a complete leak audit. Pull your last 3 bank statements, list every recurring subscription, and cancel whatever you aren't using weekly. Switch 5 basic household commodity items, like cleaning supplies or over-the-counter medications, to generic store brands. Move your liquid emergency cash to a high-yield savings account so it stops losing ground to traditional bank rates. During days 31 to 60, reintroduce positive friction back into your spending life. Delete shopping and delivery apps from your phone so that making a purchase requires sitting at a computer and typing in card details by hand. Institute a non-negotiable 30-day waiting period on any non-essential purchase over $100, and unsubscribe from retailer marketing email lists that trigger artificial urgency. During days 61 to 90, focus on system automation and acceleration. Set up automatic transfers the morning after payday so that 15 to 20% of your net take-home pay routes straight into broad market index funds before you ever see it in checking. Commit to driving your current vehicle until it is completely paid off, and then hold it for at least another 5 years while investing the equivalent car payment. Finally, sit down and establish your personal enough threshold in writing, defining the exact lifestyle boundaries that bring real satisfaction, so that future raises build wealth rather than inflating overhead. When you step back and examine these 14 refusals, you realize that every choice you make puts you on one of 2 distinct financial paths. On the visible path, you carry a leased luxury crossover, a maximum approved mortgage, annual smartphone upgrades, loud designer logos, brand name commodity items, 1% advisory fee drag, and a high-cost whole life policy. The outcome of that path is continuous display, zero margin, constant financial anxiety, and a fragile status that depends on your next paycheck. On the invisible path, you drive a paid-off, reliable sedan, maintain a modest home well below your means, keep your hardware for 4 or more years, wear unbranded, durable basics, buy generic store staples, invest in low-cost, broad-market index funds, and carry simple, low-cost term life insurance. The outcome of that path is low public display, a fat compounding portfolio, total daily calm, and unshakable freedom. You cannot alter the financial defaults you followed 5 years ago, but you possess absolute authority over the architecture you install today. Pick 2 refusals from this framework this week. Cancel the dead subscriptions, switch to generic staples, institute the 30-day waiting period, automate your index fund transfer before your checking account balance ever looks spendable. The goal was never to look rich to strangers who aren't paying your bills. The goal was always to be quietly, permanently free.